Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we will be discussing a very magical TV show with you. We're talking about Always Sunny. It is about Seinfeld. It's basically Seinfeld if they were like completely deranged assholes.
Seinfeld on crack.
Yes, Seinfeld on crack is probably the best way
Literally and
to describe
metaphorically.
this. Oh yeah, I mean Dennis is a crackhead.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, we're gonna talk about the show. It's gonna be a fun time, and we hope that you enjoy this. For those of you who don't know what we are Why Does This Exist? We're a podcast that talks about the very weirdest in pop culture, whether it's a trading card game like we just did with Yu-Gi-Oh and Yu-Gi-Oh in general, or any strange movies or any strange artists or whatever, like H.R. Giger or something like that. We're gonna talk about it. It's fun. If you want to like support us in any way, all that stuff is in the descriptions. Not gonna make a big deal out of it, and if you want to do it, you could do it, and that would be great. And if not, then that's unfortunate for you. Yeah, give us money on Patreon, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then do all those other things that are in the description. That's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. Tell the folks about It's Always Sunny, Rob, for the unindoctrinated.
So It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is this tale of it's originally 4 and then joined by a 5th deranged individuals. Like we said, it's basically Seinfeld on crack cocaine. You have Charlie. So basically, it's the gang. It's Charlie, Mac, Dennis, and Dee, and then Frank later joins them, and they own a bar called Patty's Pub in South Philadelphia. And the 4, later 5 of them, are the most narcissistic, sociopathic assholes that have like ever walked the earth, pretty much.
Yes, like you couldn't somehow think of the worst person that you've ever met in your life. They don't hold a candle to that person.
Yeah. Yeah. So they get into various,
or that person doesn't hold a candle to them, I should say.
Yes. They get into various misadventures, and often it involves drug use or some kind of like way to like scam to get rich quick. There's one episode where Dennis and Dee attempt to get welfare, even though they don't qualify for it. They come up with a bullshit thing and then eventually end up getting addicted to crack in the process of trying to get welfare.
Yes.
But so the gang, Dennis and Dee are twins, and Frank is their father, their estranged father.
Yes,
Although
it's
it's
played by the lovely Danny DeVito.
Yes. And it's later implied that he's not their biological father, that because his wife that he's now divorced from, cheated on him with everybody. So it's kind of implied that they're not his biological children, but he was.
However, it is implied that Charlie, who Frank is like his roommate with,
Yeah,
and Charlie is like the most squirrely, dumb guy, dumbest guy in the group.
He can't read or write, so he draws pictures at basically hieroglyphs to try to write things. There's an episode where they start a band and Charlie's lyrics are written out in picture form.
Yeah. But anyway, so like there is so the story, so the show does allude to Frank possibly being Charlie's father
Yes.
multiple times, and it's like inconclusive when they finally do a DNA test because there's like too much blood that gets mixed up and everything.
Yeah.
Where like they can't get a conclusive DNA sample, so they kind of throw the test out. But throughout multiple times in the show, it's it seems like Frank actually is Charlie's dad, which
Yeah.
is also kind of weird because I think they like sleep together in the same bed, and I think one of them sleeps in the
Yes.
nude, and there's all kinds of like bizarre things that they've done together where it's really like it would be incestuous if they could prove it,
Yeah.
or just very very creepy.
Frank is also a multimillionaire, but slums it basically. He like him and Charlie live in like a one-room apartment that's like in a fucking like slumlord building. Uh, and
Which I think he owns.
Yeah. And well, and they also regularly try to do things that homeless. There's an episode where they go around picking up garbage and junk so they could like I forget what the whole like reason why they're actually picking up, but they collect like literally like a room full of junk, so much so that they fill the apartment and can no longer sleep there, so have to sleep on the street like actual homeless people. Um I think it was some kind of get rich quick thing if I remember correctly. Like they were going to sell the junk or something like that. I don't even remember. But they go dumpster diving regularly. Um,
Just an odd group of people, and nobody comes to the
yes.
bar, so it's amazing that the bar is even like
Yeah, I was
still
gonna mention that.
existing after
In every
multiple seasons. No
in
one
pretty
ever
much
comes to that bar.
Yeah, it's almost always empty unless they're having some kind of event, like the episode where they have a band. They get a bunch of people to pack the bar for their show. Uh, but it's never like explained how they stay open. I mean, Frank kind of like bankrolls it, I think, a little
I
bit. So
guess that would be the way is that Frank just pays their bill.
yeah. Um. So you also have a bunch of side characters. You have uh
Oh, we also didn't mention Mac, by the way.
oh yeah, Mac. Oh,
Mac
so yeah, there's Mac, who is the bouncer at Patty's Pub, and he is it's hilarious because he's like a devout Christian, but then is also implied that he's a closeted homosexual.
which
Um,
is later proven in like the
yes,
later seasons.
yeah. Um, but it's weird because he still sleeps with women, so it's like he's really probably more bisexual, but whatever. He also uh is like extremely like anti-gay because of his Christianity, and like it very typical like Christian, like he's like very anti-abortion, even though like he's basically a huge hypocrite because they
Yeah,
all are.
yeah. Like, well, like there's an episode where like he goes on this, whole like pro-abortion crusade thing, and then he ends up sleeping with one of the women who's like
Yeah,
running the abortion campaign, who's running like the pro-life campaign, and then
yeah,
he tells her that she had, and like she gives him the news, and he immediately responds with like, "No, you have to get an abortion."
yeah.
It's
Dennis is probably the most deranged and sociopathic of them all, and
yeah,
it's also implied that Dennis possibly is a serial killer, although it's never 100% confirmed.
yeah. It's
Um,
also possibly implied that he has a thing for Mac.
yeah. Yes.
But yeah, the bigger theory is that he is a serial killer.
At the very best though, he is a womanizer and just a general piece of shit. There's one
Just a
episode where
general piece of shit.
yeah, and there's one episode where he wants to sleep with this hippie chick, but she's got a boyfriend, so he convinces the boyfriend to chain himself to the tree to stop it from being cut down. And meanwhile, he's outside in the fucking cold and rain all night while Dennis sleeps with his girlfriend. He then comes out, unchains the guy from the tree, and says, "Oh, you did it! You did it! You saved the tree!" And then immediately gets chopped down. And he says, "Oh, by the way, I slept with girlfriend." He's just like complete asshole. Um. So yeah, the whole show follows these misfits throughout their various misadventures. And they're just it gets wild. It's like again, it's like Seinfeld. The like in terms of how they interact with other people. Like it's very like almost like Larry David esque, but so much more extreme, and their vices are so much more over the top than
Oh yeah.
the Seinfeld crew. Charlie regularly sniffs paint and glue and various other substances. They all pretty much do hard drugs at some point.
Yeah.
They also drink heavily. Uh, and basically have no social skills at all.
No, they're all just terrible in general at everything.
Yes.
Like Charlie also has this weird fixation with this waitress who,
Yes.
in real life, is his wife,
Yeah.
but um, he has this like bizarre fixation with this waitress that they may or may not have gone to that like D and Dennis and D may or may not have gone to high school with.
Yeah.
It's implied that they did, but they don't remember her, but she remembers them. Um, but he's like constantly trying to seduce this waitress, and he's like obsessed with her to the point where like she has restraining orders against him multiple times in the
Yep.
show that he constantly violates. And he like on some occasions he does like she does end up like kind of enjoying his company, and there is one point where they sleep together, and like he ends up like achieving his goal and winning her by like dumb luck, and he like can't stand her when he's actually obtained the object of desire.
Yep. The chase is better than the catch.
Yeah, I mean sometimes it is,
Yep.
but like they I think the whole reason why this show even can continue to go on the air is because the characters get their comeuppance every single time,
Yes.
and it's always in a big way.
Yes.
Like it's not just like this backfires and something happens. Like on Seinfeld, this is like something catastrophic happens to them. For example, Dennis getting addicted to crack.
Yes.
Or
Uh
or really well, I mean it's anything except Cricket. Something terrible always happens to Cricket,
mm,
who was like one of the other characters you were going to mention.
yeah, yeah, there's a whole bunch of other side characters they interact with. The waitress, like you said. There's also the parents. We meet Frank's ex-wife at one point, and Max sleeps with her. And then there's this whole like thing with Charlie conning Sweet D, or D is is Dennis's sister, into doing all this stuff just to get back at each other. It's this like 5D chess like fucking plan that Charlie has, and in the end the waitress ends up sleeping with Frank to get back at Charlie after Dennis tries to date her. Like it's so like complicated that you actually have to watch the episode to understand what's going on, because it's so hard to explain it without actually like seeing it.
I mean, a
um
lot of it is just extremely convoluted.
it
But
is it
but
most
like
of the plans.
that's kind of the point.
Yeah. Yeah, most of their plans and their schemes are so convoluted that they can't possibly work, and that's like the joke, and that's why it always blows up in their face pretty much. Um and if they put as much effort into actually like working and doing like a real job as they do into scheming, they'd probably actually be good people that
Yeah,
actually are productive members of society.
or at least successful.
Yeah.
But no, they choose not to.
Yeah. Uh D, we haven't really talked about D. D is Dennis's sister and is a failed actress who works as a waitress at the pub. And there's, she's always trying to like, get her acting career going, but never actually does it because she's terrible. Um, I think, and so, we have the parents of all the characters. Mac's mom is like this like drunk friggin' old lady who just sits outside and watches TV on the porch, and his dad, I don't know if we ever meet his dad, but his dad is a
We do.
crackhead.
His dad's in
Dad's
prison.
in prison. Yeah.
And
Um
I think when Mac finally like comes out to his dad like disowns him, and then like And then I think he ends up dying in prison anyway. In like
Yeah.
like I think like he tells him that he wants to tell him that he accepts him, and then Mac walks away, and then like he feels bad about it. He goes back, and then he like dies in a prison riot or something.
Yeah. Dennis also tries to sleep with both Max and Charlie's moms at one point, but they both reject him, which is hilarious. Because like it's implied Dennis is like this ladies' man who can really get any woman he wants, and he has this thing, the Dennis system, uh, for doing such a thing, basically for having sex with women and then dumping them immediately. Um,
Yeah, and then Mac has like his own like system, which is just pick up the pieces after Dennis is done with them.
yeah. So almost every episode is also the gang does X, uh, which is or the gang, finds something, or it's always the gang and then like
Yeah.
whatever they're doing that
Sometimes
episode.
it's whatever the plot is, and sometimes it's whatever the comeuppance is.
Yes. Uh, and there are other episodes that don't have that like naming scheme, but it just the majority of them are that. Sometimes it's just like some of the characters, like the episode Dennis and Dee go on welfare, or Dennis and Dee get a new dad. Um, and then there's others that like the gang finds a dumpster baby. uh, but overall, it's just this crazy, you know, whole thing, and there's so many memes that have really come out of like Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There's the famous one of Charlie, like that's like he's like deranged looking, and he has all these like papers all over the wall with like lines going from them, like he's trying to, it's like a whole thing. And then there's the oh, did somebody get addicted to crack meme? That was a big one that came out of the one where Dennis and Dee get addicted to crack. Um, but there's just so many different memes, and like one of the most famous episodes that most people know is the Nightman Cometh episode, in which in order to win over the waitress, Charlie writes a musical uh called The Nightman Cometh, and it's based off of a song from the episode where they try to start band, and Charlie writes the Nightman song, which he's trying to like say that it's about like him becoming the spirit of the Nightman, but the song really sounds
It's
more like a man that's breaking into his house and raping him.
it's really, I think when they go into it, it's really like about his uncle who used to molest him.
Yeah, yeah. So he writes a whole musical about the this, and he's the day man. So you have the night man and the day man. And this became one of the most popular episodes of the show. It's actually probably the quintessential Always Sunny episode that, like,
Yeah.
if there's one episode where you want to point everybody to if they've never watched Always Sunny, it's probably The Nightman Cometh.
Well, it
Um,
got so big to the point that like they did a real Nightman performance. They did a
yes.
real Nightmare play, and they toured with it.
Yeah, they've actually done this live. And it's actually the whole episode they do live, but it's like prominently features the whole musical of The Nightman.
Yeah.
Um, and then there you have the troll that you got to pay the troll toll to get in this boy's hole, even though it's supposed to be this to get this boy's soul, but Frank is just like sings it completely wrong. It's one of those classic episodes, and if you're ever like, this is actually the episode that you introduced me Always Sunny, or like years and years ago. This was the episode we watched when you were introducing me to Always Sunny in
Oh my
Philadelphia.
gosh,
It was The Nightman Cometh.
I forgot that that was that I introduced you to this show.
Yeah, yeah.
I got introduced to this in college, so maybe it was the summer after or something like that.
It was
But
fairly
yeah,
new.
like the people who were my roommates at the time, they like were started watching it, and they actually no, they were not my roommates, but well, Spaceman Frank was
Oh
one
yeah.
of the. It was him and his roommate. And they put it on, and I had never seen that. They also got me into Arrested Development,
Oh yeah.
and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And we watched like I think the first episode that I may have watched might have been The Nightman too, and then I showed it to you, and then we ended up using the Nightman theme song for our outro when
Yeah. Oh,
whenever
Dayman.
we yeah, the Dayman whenever we played live.
Yeah.
And everybody loved it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was Dayman. Ah, fighter of the night, man. Yeah, it was such a great episode, and again, one of those quintessential Always Sunny episodes. Like basically, like it's got everything that would be in an Always Sunny episode, like the scheme, Charlie trying to get with the waitress, like it's got everything. So it's like and of course it's like terrible, like they're all awful and they all, it's hilarious because they all want to like be the star and like they're all trying to treat it seriously even though it's terrible and it's just so bad. And at the end, Charlie has this like unscripted thing where he comes down dressed in this yellow suit, and actually, Charlie Day has actually worn this suit like at Comic-Con and stuff. It's basically just a yellow suit with a white top hat, and that's him as the Day Man, and he sings this song and then proposes to the waitress, and obviously she says no. And it's hilarious because like he thinks this is somehow going to win her over, even though how bad it is. It's like it's so absurd and so ridiculous. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Um, I mean, there's just so much ridiculous shit that happens in this show that
Yeah,
like it's impossible to keep track of.
yeah,
And one of the weirdest things is that this show found it started hitting its peak, like it started really like hitting its stride when like around like its fifth or sixth season when it
yeah,
like and it was like gaining popularity around that time. I think because it was like a free thing to watch. Well, not I don't know about free, but like it was a thing to watch on Hulu, and there wasn't a lot of content on Hulu yet, so it just started getting picked up because like FX stuff was on Hulu.
yeah,
But also like it was like readily available to for like people to find stuff on like YouTube and everything. So like and like they did what they needed to do to get it out there. But normally a show is done by like season 4,
yeah,
like or it's winding down. The show will usually peak at around season 3, or if it does peak around season 5, then the show doesn't really go much longer. Like season 7 or something like that is usually like the last bit. They don't really last that long, especially nowadays. But it's always fun. Sunny ends up really taking off in season 5 or 6, and it just kept getting more and more ridiculous. Like it stayed hilarious
yes.
throughout. And I think now they're on,
They're season
what are
16
they
now.
on? Yeah, 16,
It's actually
where
the longest running live action sitcom on TV.
yeah, that's
Um,
amazing.
and it's actually apparently renewed for 4 more seasons, so it'll be 16,
Jesus.
17, and 18, or
Well,
16, 17, 18, and 19 or something.
well, it also became, I mean, it also is like has always been inexpensive to produce, so that's kind of why it ended up getting greenlit in the first place. So the way that the
Yeah,
show, there's like a couple of origin stories that they like that have been told over the years, but one of like what seems to be the main one was that it's always was um well Charlie Day, Glenn Howerton, who is Dennis, and Rob McElhenney, who is Mac. The three of them were struggling actors who they all kind of appeared on like Law and Order or something like that, which I think was how they met because everybody has just kind of appeared on that show.
yeah.
Except me, I have yet to be called. I'll get that call one day. Just by accident. You don't even have to, I heard you don't even have to do anything to be on the show. Like you don't even have to be an actor. They like somebody just calls you one day and they're like, "Hey, are you free Thursday?" I think so. Why? Well, we need you to come down for Law and Order. Oh, okay. What am I doing? Your body. Oh, you just need me to lie down. Yes, that's the job. Okay, and then you wind up on Law and Order as a corpse, and that's your claim to fame. Um, Anyway, they they're all struggling actors, and they're all struggling actors, and they all kind of like come together. And I believe I don't know if any of them were roommates, but at any point in time, but they come together, they become friends, and they're both like kind of out of work actors. One of them gets a camcorder, that like just really inexpensive. I think they borrow it from a friend, or it was like $100 or something. It was really cheap, and they put that together, and they and like Curb Your Enthusiasm was starting to get popular too. So they were like, hey, let's just put together this like weird thing, and they put it together, and it was just like this awkward situational thing where I think it was like a guy was trying to the theme was like some guy went in to go buy to borrow sugar from a neighbor,
Hmm.
and then it turns out that the neighbor like has cancer, so the neighbor tells him about that, and it's like this awkward interaction, and it's just like awkwardly funny, and it ends up becoming like a bigger thing. Now there was also now when they decided they wanted to get a girl, they like and they showed it around. It went viral on YouTube, I believe, and then it got it ended up like blowing up,
Hmm.
and like FX picks it up, and when they decided to do this, It's Always Sunny had gotten canceled originally, so like they were gonna do it, and then like it didn't happen. Um, but also there was when they were deciding to write a woman into the show, they didn't know how to write a girl character, but that comes in later. D, the Caitlin Olsen who plays D, she wasn't the first choice. Uh,
Hmm.
Rob's Rob McElhenney's girlfriend at the time was also an actress, and they were gonna have her play D. And then, well, they broke up, so
Hmm.
they had to pick a new girl. So they like got D, they got along with her, they met her, and like they got Caitlin Olsen, who is Rob McElhenney's now wife. So
Yeah, but they started
that's
dating.
an yeah, that's an odd pattern.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, so they ended up doing that, and the show originally got canceled, but they also had trouble writing women, and like Caitlin Olsen was like, why why is it so bad? And they also didn't want D to be as bad as they are. They wanted her
Yeah.
to be like kind of the straight man or straight woman to the other to like the gang. And she was like, "No, D should be awful too."
Yeah.
And they didn't really know how to write her cuz like they didn't I guess they didn't really have too many female friends or like or what or didn't really grow up with like sisters much or whatever it was. I don't really know. But they just didn't know how to write women, and D was like, "Why don't you just write it like a guy?" Like
Yeah.
just and then like for some stupid reason that clicked, and then it worked. They did a show and it became like a big thing, but it was originally going to get canceled, and they wanted them to attach a big name to it. So I believe Danny DeVito had seen it, and they were like, "Hey, let's see if we could get him." And he loved the idea, so he came on board as Frank for season 2.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that like the whole reason why FX ended up taking it was one, they kind of needed something to fill like a slot up, and two, this show was very inexpensive to produce, so they were like, okay, well, if it's really cheap to produce, then we might be able to just like do something with this. And this is probably one of their most successful shows that they've ever had.
Yeah. And it's also
It also kind of set the tone for like FX as a network
yeah, kind
in a
of.
way.
It did because FX being like obviously owned by Fox, but often having more raunchy and stuff that you wouldn't be able to see on normal network TV.
Yeah, like
In
they
fact,
really push the boundaries with a lot of the programming.
yeah, like their drama series, especially like Sons of Anarchy, was pretty extreme for a network television show. Well, cable television that wasn't like premium like
Yeah.
HBO.
As well as
Um,
American Horror Story, it's like a
yeah,
lot more gruesome than you'd expect than you would normally be able to see on cable TV.
yeah,
So I
um,
think because I think It's Always Sunny kind of like set the template for that network.
It's Always Sunny also really pushed the envelope on sitcoms itself because the majority of the episodes are improv. Um, they basically come up with an outline of like what they're gonna like do for the episode, and most of the dialogue is improvised. And this is actually like if you actually when they did the live Nightman Cometh one, every show they did was a little bit different because the dialogue would be slightly different and they would interact in different ways, and especially with the playing off the audience when they did it live. Um, so that alone I think is pretty interesting because like usually you don't see that on a sitcom. Like you might have like a sketch comedy show like SNL or something that might go off the cuff a little bit and do some ad libbing, but like pretty much the whole show of Always Sunny is improvised. At least the dialogue is. Um, so I always thought that was really interesting, and it just shows like the skill of the actors. Like they're all so great at like playing off each other and making it work.
Yeah, there's like a really good synergy and like
Yeah,
chemistry between
they have
the
a
crew.
lot of chemistry, all the actors. And
I mean, they've also been playing these characters for so many years that now it's
yeah,
just like easy
well,
to just
yeah, of
like
course,
get it
yeah, they
done.
just basically it's just them now. um, but yeah, it's just it's so like unique in that regard, especially for as long as it's been, and it's like it hasn't gotten old, which so many sitcoms overstay their welcome. Even like popular ones, a lot of people will say like, "Oh, it should have ended like 3 seasons ago or 4 seasons ago." But Always Sunny does not have that problem. Like it's like always been great, pretty much. Um, I think there's really not a lot of sitcoms that can get that level. You could probably argue like maybe like Curb Your Enthusiasm is kind of like almost there. Um, but
Maybe. I mean, there were certain seasons where you were like where if you go back, I mean now it's obviously done, but there were so many seasons where you could go back and you could just say, yeah, this would have been fine to end it.
yeah, yeah,
Like I don't think there's anywhere I'm like, oh, it goes downhill from here, but there's like definitely somewhere I'm like, they they could have stopped after this one.
yeah. But you know what? You could even say that about Seinfeld, because
Yeah, well,
Harry did.
I think Seinfeld like kind of ran a little bit longer than it needed to too.
Yeah, I think the reason why they did because they were just making so much. It was the biggest fucking thing since
Oh
sliced bread,
yeah. I
and it
mean,
was just making so much money they couldn't stop.
well, yeah, I mean the same thing with Friends. Like they were making too much
Yes.
money,
Yeah.
but like well, Friends and The Big Bang Theory kind of had the same problem where I mean I never really got into these shows. I've watched like a few here and there, but like
Yeah.
they never really appealed to me. But um but like Friends and The Big Bang Theory's problems was that the network kept ordering more seasons of the show, but
Yeah.
everyone else kind of wanted to stop it. So the
Yeah.
actors started asking for like they started asking for bigger cuts where they were just like throwing like the most absurd numbers they could think of, and the network was like still greenlighting it, so they were like, okay, I guess we have to do another season now, until eventually it became too expensive to do the show, where where like the network was just looking at the numbers and they were like, it's impossible for us to like we're going to be in the red if we do another season.
Yeah.
So they were just like, okay, this season has to be the last one. And I think everybody was kind of like collectively saying thank you.
Yeah.
Also, thank you for the stupid amounts of money.
Yeah. I Big Bang was one that really overstayed its welcome, I think. I liked Big Bang in the earlier seasons, but then it just started getting really repetitive and not funny anymore. You know, it got kind of stupid.
I mean, also for most sitcoms, there's only so much that they could really do with the
Yes.
characters.
Well, and I think that's why Always Sunny is so unique because they've gone so long and it's still kind of fresh.
Well, also because they can just keep being they can keep being as horrible as possible, and they can somehow keep getting worse.
Yeah.
That that's what keeps it fresh, is that they are somehow able to come up with like worse things happen to them. It's kind of like the Mortal Kombat thing, where like every game you're like, do they really need to do another Mortal Kombat game? And then you see the fatalities, and you're just like, oh my god, this is more gruesome than last time.
Yeah.
Now I have to play this.
I also think they kind of go by the Seinfeld philosophy where the characters in Seinfeld, it was always the rule was no growth and no hugs. Um so like they don't ever grow or learn from their mistakes and they never hug each other.
Yeah.
And that was like Seinfeld's like thing pretty much the whole time. And I think Always Sunny kind of does something similar, that they never learn from their mistakes. They're always assholes and they'll
Well,
never get better.
no, in fact, they like the whole point of the show is for them to get to become worse people over time.
Yes.
Where like the only way that they could really end the show is having stuff. It was having like a mob of all the people, all of, like the recurring characters of whose lives they've all ruined over the years, like murder all of them.
Yeah. The only way it would be
And even
bad.
then, I could see them doing a season where they're in heaven being assholes to like the angels and everything, and
Yeah.
then they go to hell and they're assholes and they like outclass like all of the demons and like and Satan to the point where they end up just like putting them back on Earth because neither God nor Satan want to deal with them.
Yeah.
So they could even do that and just kind of loop the show continuously forever. That actually might be a really fun way to end the show.
Yeah.
Well, I've written it. I will like please send all of the money in cash.
Just email them
just
right now.
just slide it under my door. I
E-
will
e-
tell you
e-
where to go.
Rob McElhenney and fucking Glenn Howerton.
Yeah, just
I have the idea.
just slide it under the door in unmarked 10s and 20s. I want to not be able to leave my apartment with how much money is sitting under the door.
I
You're welcome.
there's a fun little thing that I want to mention is that every D&D campaign that I've ever been in has turned into Always Sunny in the Forgotten Realms.
Oh my god. That's
Uh
great.
yeah, and it became like a meme, and this happens a lot with like a lot of dungeon masters have this problem where the people end up just like being the worst possible like people ever, and like, oh, I just want to like, oh, we're not getting what we need, let's just go murder half the town until we do. And that's pretty much like every D&D campaign is just always, it's Always Sunny in the Forgotten Realms, and I've experienced this personally several times
That's
on
awesome.
both ends, being a dungeon master and a player.
You know, that's one of those things that I would have always liked to do, but I can't see myself having the time to like complete an entire campaign,
It's
and
almost impossible,
I know
especially
that
even
would.
playing online. Like everyone just loses interest or stops being able to meet up for D&D, so like it just ends up dying. And that's every single campaign I've ever done pretty much. I've never completed a campaign.
Oh man, well, you know, I bet you that I could probably find like an Eventbrite where like or like thing where like just like a social event where like it's just
Yeah.
like a 1 day D&D campaign of just like to learn stuff.
You could do
I,
one-offs and stuff. They do have that. And a lot of like local game stores will actually do D&D nights, and sometimes they do one-offs.
I would like to do that, but
Yeah.
yeah, the other things is that like we were saying, they intentionally want their characters to get worse over the shows. I mean, Rob McElhenney has said it specifically that he wanted it for Mac, and we see that in the season where like Mac is just, you know, he's always like a bouncer guy who like claims that he's way more in shape than he is and everything like that. And he like is just fat one season. Like he's
Yeah.
like he gained the weight on purpose. Like he just gained like 75 pounds or something like that. And then the follow and like just he keeps eating and he keeps like lying and saying that he's like shredded
Yeah.
and like everyone is telling him the opposite and he like is just like, oh, you guys, he's like in total denial that he's fat and not like jacked.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and like the following season he has lost all of the weight and then some, and
Yeah.
like it's like no one says anything.
It was actually he did that on purpose because he wanted to
Yeah.
see how for like comedic effect, like how it would be if if Mac just suddenly got fat. And it got to the point where his actual real life co-stars were very concerned for his health because he gained so much weight so quickly.
Oh my god.
Uh, but yeah, he was able to lose the weight. Of course, uh, he actually made a joke about it, like, "Oh, it's so easy to do, especially when you have like, you can't eat anything and you're, lifting weights every single 6 days a week, and you just start running and you stop drinking alcohol and you have a personal trainer that." Sleep out 9 hours a night. It's like lists of like all these things of what he had to do to like get like in shape again, and it's like basically saying how like unrealistic it is for him, like anybody that's normal to do that, and he was only able to do it because he's like rich and could pay for a
Yeah.
personal trainer and all this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, but yeah, it's
But still, like one of the ballsiest things like to ever do on television.
yeah, I mean, again, a lot these guys are like super like dedicated and very much like method actors. They really are like, you know, they're method actor and they're great actors. They're good at improv. Like it's just it wouldn't Always Sunny would not be what it is if it weren't for the skill of Charlie, Rob, Glenn, Caitlin, and Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
Like they're just all like so great at what they do, and it's really what makes the show what it is.
Yeah. I mean, similar to like it's similar to a wrestling gimmick. Like the ones that work don't necessarily the ones that work the best don't necessarily work because the gimmick was good. They work because of the guy doing the gimmick.
Hmm.
And I think that's true for the Always Sunny cast. I think other actors in these roles, I think some of them would have been fine, but I don't think that they would have been as good as the ones that we have.
Yeah,
Like this whole show has just kind of been like lightning in a bottle for these people.
yeah,
There are also some like crazy fan theories out there for It's Always Sunny. Like any good show, you really haven't made it unless there's been like unless the internet has like made up a bunch of like ridiculous fan theories
hmm,
of the show. But like one of them is that like Charlie is actually a genius
yeah,
and like he's like losing his he's like losing his sanity because of the because he's exposed to I think a lot of like carbon dioxide poisoning or something
Well,
like
he
that.
also lives in like a slum that has rats
Yeah.
and cockroaches and
Well, he also shoves things in the wall to like stop the rats.
yeah. And he
It's
fucking
like
huffs inhalants like paint and gasoline and various other things.
yeah, but there is like a I believe it's either carbon. I think it is carbon dioxide, but like there like it is scientifically proven that if you're exposed to too much carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide, whichever one it is, um, you like your brain cells die at a rapid pace, and you do you do start to act in very specific erratic fashions that Charlie and members of the gang do. And there's also like an episode where like I think an like a health inspector or somebody like comes into the bar to inspect like those levels or something because there's like a burst pipe or something,
Yeah.
and the levels are off the charts, and he like passes out like quickly
Hmm.
from the exposure to this. Meanwhile, the gang is like fine.
Yeah.
So like all of them is been exposed to these levels, and that's one of the reasons why they're acting as crazy as they are. But the thing with Charlie being a genius is that like he like that's like another part of this is that he's lost so many brain cells that he is a genius, and we are seeing like hidden talents in like his language and music abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But which like I think in some episodes he can read and write, but like those skills are just like lost in other ones, which is also a sign of like the exposure to like these chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
There's also just like there's the dentist being the serial killer one. Um, there's also like Frank being Charlie's father, and there's like a ton of others out there. Um, if there's any like favorite ones that you want to like pull off of this, and the same thing like we said with the true story of the Nightman of like being Charlie's uncle.
Yeah. I don't. I
Oh,
don't
it's
know.
carbon monoxide. That's what it is.
Okay. All right. Um. I don't know.
I think there is also another one that um that the way that the gang looks at like the whole thing the gang has imagined, and they're all like just like these deranged like homeless oddities basically,
Mm-hmm.
who like they can't do any of the things that they actually do, and their narcissism is at such like an intense level that they perceive themselves and the scenarios that they're in very differently than what's actually happening. And it's actually like kind of sad where like Dennis believes that he's like this extremely handsome guy who can sleep with all of these women,
Yeah.
he but like in actuality he's like hideous, and like none of this stuff happens. Or and it's also like why we see Mac like his like self his image of himself is that he's in great physical condition, and he's like super strong, and he's muscular, and he's a bouncer and everything, and he's a tough guy. But we never see him actually doing any feats of strength, and we often see him being a lot more cowardly in any of these situations.
Yeah.
um just like other similar things of how Dee like thinks that she's this beautiful actress, but like similar to Dennis, she's not talented or any of that. But
Mm-hmm.
there's like a bunch of really interesting It's Always Sunny theories that I welcome, and I think you do too.
Yeah. 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 There. It's. I mean, uh, I don't think you could have the cult following that it does and go as long as you can without having the crazy theories. Um. Like Dennis being a serial killer and stuff like that. Uh. And it's it really lends credit to like how good like the writing is and how good like the character interactions are that people can come up with these crazy theories about the show. Um,
And
because it's just
it's just so quick.
yeah, oh yeah, it's just it's just such a great show, and uh, I would say it's the spiritual successor to Seinfeld. You could say that Always Sunny or Curb Your Enthusiasm rather is kind of like the actual sequel to Seinfeld, but this is like the spiritual sequel to Seinfeld.
Hmm.
Um, because it's just that whole like idea of having these awful people and interacting with people like that are fairly normal but also kind of awful too, and like it's just everybody's terrible to each other, and it's hilarious, and how bad they are, and you know it, it's like I don't know. Sometimes sitcoms go on to this like everybody is so good, it's like this heartwarming thing, and it's like it gets kind of lame. It's very like melodramatic, but I think this is like more like realistic of like everybody being an asshole, which is like kind of like real life, you
Yeah,
know?
and like people don't really like change as much as they'd like to think that they
Exactly.
do.
Yeah.
Like also, I mean, the point of the show is also like it's the company you keep that really like determines what happens to you.
Yeah.
Because like they're always holding Dee back from possibly being, the actress that she thinks that she can become,
Yeah.
and they're always stopping her from doing this. I mean, they may be stopping Dennis from like actually being a serial killer, but who
Maybe.
knows? Um, like Frank is just the bane of everyone's existence in his own way, and Charlie, well, they're pretty much all destroying Charlie. Like
Yeah.
there's like constantly. They're
Yeah,
also
Charlie
like
is probably of all the bad people, Charlie is probably the least bad because he's like kind of like the most naive and like it, he just seems like he's kind of like just stuck with these people and like they treat him like shit. Um Even though he could be a fucking terrible person too, but like I don't
he
it's just
does often get the better of them though. Like they all
yeah,
like misjudge him as being like,
that's true.
this like simpleton idiot, but he ends up getting the better of them most of the time.
Yeah. Uh but you kind of feel bad for Charlie in a way because he's kind of like an idiot, like he's got
Yeah.
that like going for him. So he's got the sympathy, thing. He's more of the underdog of the group. So you kind of root for Charlie the most, even though
Yeah.
he's a terrible person too.
Yeah, I guess that it. I guess that's it. Do you have a favorite episode?
Uh, I mean, the Nightman Cometh is one of my favorites. Not only because it was like the first episode I ever seen, but it's just a really good episode. It's fucking hilarious, and
Yeah.
like the Dayman song became such a thing for us because of using it as the outro. Uh, so that's definitely up there as one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there too. I do also like. I mean, one of my favorites is like the wrestling episode where they decided to just put on a wrestling show,
Yeah,
and like Roddy Piper is just there, and he's just like this like he pretty much is just like what happened to me.
yeah,
But like I mean, of course, the best part of that episode is Frank being the trash man.
yeah. The gang gets held hostage is a pretty good episode too. That's pretty hilarious.
Mm. So is
Uh,
the gang sets D on fire. Pretty
yeah,
much anytime they do something, pretty much anytime it's the gang does something to D, it's usually like one of the better episodes.
yeah. Dennis and Dee go on welfare. That's a good one when
Yeah,
because they both get addicted to crack, which is pretty hilarious. I don't know. There's so
there's a
many good
ton.
ones. There really is a ton. It's hard to select a favorite because there's so many good ones, and they're all good in their own way. It's not like they don't ever really follow the same pattern. They all have like these ridiculous situations, and it doesn't ever feel stale or rehashed.
Right. I mean, even like, I mean, and even just like how quick they are with the like with just the writing, where like of how they like can even throw in like real life things. Like there's the COVID episode where like basically the gang is responsible for like the entire pandemic and everything, and like the fallout of the pandemic and the insurrection and everything.
Yeah,
It's like it's just like really like brilliant on their end to just like decide how they're gonna like have a season play out. Or I really liked one of the recent seasons where they were in Ireland the entire time because it was like so different that you would not have like, but they still managed to like even make Ireland hate them.
yeah.
There have been there is also like a weird. I haven't seen it, but there is supposedly this like Russian clone floating around where of just I think it's just called it's like a blatant rip off
Oh my god.
where like they're just Russian and meaner to each other. Like it's not like they're just mean for the sake of being mean. And like I think it's just called It's Always Sunny in Moscow. And like the name of the bar that they own is called Philadelphia.
Oh my god.
It's like they like didn't even try.
That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, but I also can't imagine like if that like the Always Sunny people like trying to go after them because they'll probably just get KGB'd.
Yeah.
Not worth it. Let them have their show.
Yeah.
Like some of the episodes are even like just direct copies of the episode. Like there's
That's
not even any
crazy.
originality. Yeah, but in Mother Russia, TV watch you.
Yeah.
So there you go. Do we have anything else that we need to say about this show?
No, I think that's pretty much it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's fucking hilarious.
Well, All right, and that's all that I got to say about that.
Yeah.
Oh. Thank you everybody for like tuning in and listening to us. We hope you enjoyed yourselves. And if you haven't listened to the show, then like if you haven't watched the show, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You should really you're doing yourself a disservice, and you should like get on that right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but if you have, go watch your favorite episode, and I don't know, I guess do any of the other things you were going to do in relation to our show. Thanks for coming. Just yeah, I got nothing else to say.
Yeah.
This has been another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris,
And I'm Rob.
and remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.